So although the Christmas story is well known, very few people have actually read the whole thing. Most people don't even realize there are two versions of the Christmas story in the King James Bible, which is the most widely accepted version. Matthew and Luke both tell a completely different story. For example, in Matthew, there is no story of the birth. There are no swaddling clothes, no stable, no manger, no angels, and you only hear Mary one time. Joseph and Herod are the star characters. In Luke, Mary is the central character. Matthew takes 31 verses to tell the story, and Luke takes 132, which is 4 times longer. So it was kind of a no-brainer to work from Matthew. So one of the important things that most people don't know about the Bible is that it was written in a time when people could not read or write. So it's simply a book of metaphors or stories that are filled with esoteric or hidden meanings. It's created to guide all of us towards a greater experience of living. It was actually written 600 years after Jesus walked the face of the earth. And the chapters that are attributed to Matthew and Luke were written by what we would call in this time ghost writers, people who actually did not know him. And it's been interpreted into 181 different languages, which reminds me of the story of the 2 Benedictine monks who were transcribing the Bible from its original Aramaic into the Latin. And Thaddeus and Theodore were pretty serious individuals, and they worked side by side for years and years and years translating this holy book. And one morning, Thaddeus was dancing around. And Theodore said to him, "Brother Thaddeus, what is it?" He said, "Well, it doesn't say celibate, it says celebrate." So I don't know about you, but as a child, the Bible scared me half to death. It wasn't until I became a minister and I had to interpret it metaphysically that I began to really understand the hidden or esoteric meaning in it. So we're not looking at the historical or the literal interpretation this morning, but rather we're going to be sharing from a metaphysical perspective. And meta simply means above the physical. So we're working in the spiritual realm. And Jeannie has been gracious enough to assist me this morning with reading the passages from the Bible that I'm going to interpret.
And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeareth to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son.
Out of Egypt have I called my son. Egypt metaphysically represents the subjective or the unconscious mind, where all of our beliefs are stored. Some are labeled good, some are labeled bad. But whenever we think, we call upon those beliefs, and they have a direct effect upon what we experience. So if you only remember one thing from this morning's message, remember that our thoughts become our things. So I'm going to have us repeat together again from our community affirmations. I agree to speak enthusiastically and clearly. I agree to speak enthusiastically and clearly, inspiring us to live in the ever-expanding awareness of love and oneness. So she'll begin with Matthew chapter 2. So the more traditional teachings speak of Jesus as the only begotten Son of God. In the original Aramaic, it translates to say, the Son begotten of the Father. So there's a little reversal in the order there. And the Son metaphysically represents cause. The Father metaphysically represents cause. The Son metaphysically represents effect. And begotten, which is the plural of begat, means to produce. So the Son, begotten of the only Father, simply means that the effect produces, that the cause produces the effect. So in a nutshell, what we believe becomes our experience. So the biggest challenge we face is learning how to use the conscious mind to discern which of our unconscious beliefs serve our greater good. And this is what the science of mind is all about, which is what we practice here. So now we'll go back to the story at the beginning, and Jeannie will share Matthew chapter 1, verses 8.
Now the birth of Jesus Christ was on this wise. When, as his mother Mary was espoused to Joseph, before they came together, she was found with child of the Holy Ghost. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man, and not willing to make her a public example, was minded to put her away privily. But while he thought on these things, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a dream, saying, Joseph, thou son of David, fear not to take unto thee Mary thy wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Ghost. And she shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins. Now all this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us.
Imagine, Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. So not a God that's separate from us, but the idea of a higher power that lives and moves and expresses through us. Joseph metaphysically represents our imagination, or where the new ideas come from. Mary metaphysically represents our intuition, or that still small voice inside your head. Born of a virgin in Aramaic, which is the traditional verbiage, means the birth of a new idea. So Joseph knew her not isn't about the physical. It's about using our conscious mind to bring forth our own ideas. It is only through our imagination and our intuition that we can begin to tap into that unconscious mind and create a world that is better for ourselves. But Joseph doesn't understand this yet. And an angel appears in a dream to guide him. And angels are messengers of God. Metaphysically, they represent our spiritual perceptive faculties. And Joseph is willing to listen to his guides. How many of you listen to yours? So he moves forward consciously into the unknown. My mentor, Dr. Arlene, would say he's willing to step out onto the skinny branches. He marries a pregnant woman, which is quite a scandal in that time period. How many of us are strong enough or would be willing enough to do that?
Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judea. For thus it is written by the prophet, And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, art not the least among the princes of Judea. For out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel.
So Jesus metaphysically represents the I am that I am, the conscious realization of who we are as spiritual beings. Bethlehem metaphysically represents the house of bread, and that symbolizes an abiding place of substance. Judea metaphysically represents praise, and that symbolizes the spiritual recognition of that substance. So that universal intelligence is always available for each of us to call upon. Jesus passes through all the trials and tribulations that we do, but at a subjective level, he already believes in an unlimited universe. And as he begins to recognize the power of that universe, 2 verses 1 he starts
6.
learning how to use it. You may remember in another story that he turns the water into wine. So the wine symbolizes the vitality of the connection between the soul and the body, or the outpicturing of our dreams and desires. There is a power within us that gives us authority over the things of the world. Jesus himself said, Greater things than these, so shall you do. So as children of the divine, we have access to that unlimited universe. The only thing that keeps us from manifesting our dreams and our desires is our own thinking. So let's affirm again together. Change your thinking.
Change your life.
Change your experience. So the wise men come from the east, asking for the King of the Jews. And King Herod is troubled, as is all of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem metaphysically represents a place of peace. King Herod, on the other hand, represents our ego at work in the sense consciousness. So even though Herod lives in a place of peace, he's at war within himself. Why? Because he doesn't understand how the laws of the universe work. So he gets busy moving things around out there in what I like to call the land of effect. He demands information about where the Christ child should be born. And the Christ ideal represents the complete idea of perfect man as it exists in potential in divine mind. And that perfection is the intelligence, the love, the light, the harmony, the peace, all the things that motivate us to be who we are. So that perfect man exists eternally, and we can always call upon it. It is the higher, solar, cosmic Christ itself within each of us. And it is only when we recognize and unify ourselves with that ideal that the highest and best can manifest through us. For out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Israel is one who has dominion over God and man, one who understands the relationship between the spiritual and the material worlds. What we like to call in this teaching, love working through law. And that law governs the outpicturing of our prayers based upon what is in our subjective beliefs.
Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also." When they had heard the king, they departed. And lo, the star, which they saw in the east, went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. When they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned by God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way.
So King Herod wants to know what time the star appeared. He's clearly working in the third dimension, where there is time and space. And he tries to destroy the virgin child because he can't understand the concept of a new idea. How many of us resist things that are presented to us? The star that the wise men saw in the east represents our intuition. And now the revelations of truth Matthew chapter 2 that are as yet verse 7 through 12. It's like trying to understand an infinite from a finite perspective. And the wise men represent our accumulated wisdom and the experience of the soul. When our ability to accomplish calls forth the very best in us, even though we don't fully understand, we're still willing to offer the gifts of gold, which represent the riches of spirit. We're still willing to offer the gifts of frankincense, which represent the beauty of spirit. And we're still willing to offer the gifts of myrrh, which represent the eternality of spirit. These gifts relate to our inner conviction of who we really are as the divine Son of the One. And that innate knowing exists within each of us. Normally it manifests as a result of our inner faith, a belief that all is good because it is all good. So let's affirm that together. It is all good.
It is all good.
It is all God.
It is all God.
So because of their deep-rooted belief, the wise men encounter Mary, the mother of Jesus, and she represents the motherhood of love. Through their daily devotion, they prepare for the higher life, and they leave their ego behind and depart into their own country another way. And I'd like to share a quote from John Shelby Spong, who wrote a book entitled Jesus for the Non-Religious. He spent 30 years after being kicked out of the seminary trying to get the idea of that clear for himself. And he says this is not a story about real people who once followed a real wandering star. Visible to people in every nation, stars are universal symbols for all human beings to see. It is this announcement star, Matthew says, that draw the gentle magi, or wise men, across their tribal barriers of fear and insecurity in a journey to the place where he asserts Jesus was born. And that Jesus that he speaks of is the I am that I am.
But when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeareth in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he arose and took the young child and his mother and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither. Notwithstanding, being warned of God in a dream, he turned aside into the parts of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene.
Finally, Herod is dead, not unlike the wicked witch who melted down. So the ego, and we all know the acronym EGO, edging God out, has finally destroyed itself. And Joseph now travels into the land of Israel. And Israel is one who has power within both the spiritual and the material worlds. So in our lifetime, these are what are called the light workers, the gate workers, the ones who are traveling between the higher and the lower dimensions, opening a path for all of us to enter into the kingdom. They are also our licensed practitioners who guide us through spiritual mind treatment towards a greater experience of the connection between the spiritual and the material world. Verse 19 through 23. So Joseph finally prevails over everything by using his conscious mind. He decides to stretch his spiritual muscle, regardless of what it looks like out there in the land of effect. You may have noticed that he always takes Mary and Jesus with him wherever he goes. Mary represents the voice of intuition. Jesus, of course, is that inner conviction, or the I am that I am. So Joseph is awakening. He recognized Archelaus as Herod's son. And with the help of his spiritual guides, Mary and Joseph, he's able to turn away from the ego or the material world and make the final journey back to Nazareth. And Nazareth has a reputation for being disreputable. And that symbolizes the commonplace mind of man, that collective subjective mind where all ideas are stored. A place where we are free to choose our own unique spiritual path. And sometimes our journey will lead us into the darkness. And this is one of my absolute favorite quotes from Dr. Tom Costa. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not stop to build a condominium. So how many times do we repeat the patterns? Life does leave clues. Do not return to Herod. Depart into your own country, your own way. So the possibility of a virgin birth or the emergence of a new idea of what the higher power can become for each of us is always available. It is only through our own deep inner contemplation that we can evolve our conscious awareness of our connection to it. So whether you are akin to the traditional Christmas story or the story read from the King James Bible or the children's version or Dr. Ernest Holmes's personal appearance, aka Carol Campbell, doesn't really matter. What matters is that you turn towards something. And so that is just the Christmas message for today, to turn towards that light and really embody it and make it part of your experience. Thank you, and namaste.